Hey guys, how are you all doing? I'm back with another episode of my Dakar web series. Today I'm gonna show you how my bike came back from South America. I still didn't even clean it because I really wanted to show you and make an episode on this and give you an insight on all the issues and problems I had and any modifications I made before the race once I got to South America. To start with, the first modification I made, I changed the rear disc. Once we were in Asuncion, it was very hot, so I opted for this braking full disc. As you can see, it has no holes. The advantage of running this type of disc is that when you brake a lot and there's a lot of heat, it takes more time for the brake caliper to really heat up, so it dissipates better the heat. And I use quite a lot the rear brake, so this was important for me. I also changed the front brake with a bigger brake. I put a 270 millimeters instead of the 250, I think is the OEM one. Then, as you can see, I put obviously all my bike graphics with all my sponsors. I must say I was pretty satisfied on how my whole setup performed during Dakar, because I had no issues at all on the engine and didn't have to worry about that. I had some issues with the frame, which I'll explain, and I was happy I had no issues at all with fuel nor injectors, because I had some custom fuel filters made for my tanks from an Italian company called Guglatec. As you can see, these filters let you filter the fuel once you're pouring it in, and this is fundamental when you race Dakar in South America, because you might encounter some dirt fuel, or let's say there is a sandstorm and your refuel, some sand might have got in the fuel barrels and it could get inside your tank, in your fuel, and get your injector blocked. So that was a really smart, I think, decision to put those, even though I always had an injector with me ready to change it. The issue I had was mainly just one. I had an issue with the rear subframe. As you can see, it's all held up with zip ties, because a strange thing happened. On one day I was pretty fast and I didn't see a big hole, and I went full throttle, like I was 130 kilometers an hour, and just, you know, jumped this big hole. Luckily I didn't crash, thanks also to suspensions, because I had some stiffer springs put on the rear and on the front. But what happened, it cracked where the seat bolt goes. My tank was held up by 4 bolts. 2 are the seat bolts, and here 2 other bolts. The problem is, on the rear subframe, the part where the seat and the tank bolts on, that's welded on the subframe, it cracked and it broke. So I had nothing to support this tank. Even though I had all the other 3 bolts, it wasn't enough. This caused me also another issue, because the tank started moving a lot, and I started having problems also with the exhaust, with this bolt here. Inside here, the rubber that is inside here, it wore out completely, so I had all this that was all moving. I managed to get at the end of the stage, I tried to fix it, still it was moving quite a lot. And what happened, I was lucky, this happened on the last stage. Once I got to the finish line, the exhaust moving and all the tank moving, and it went touching on the fuel hose. So I reached the finish with fuel that was pouring out of my rear tank, because it had burned the hose. So I was really lucky. In any case, if you know, I was in another stage and noticed this, I would have disconnected the front tank from this rear tank, because I put a dual valve quick disconnect. This means that if I disconnect, as you can see, I disconnected. If I disconnect the 2 tanks, I will have no fuel pouring out, because it has a valve that closes and I can use only the front tank. So I thought about this, that things can go wrong, tanks can break, but generally the tanks instead had no problems at all. I like the Safari tank quality because it's very thick plastic. And also I didn't have many crashes this year during Dakar. As you can see here, the instruments, all the instruments, I changed nothing at all during the whole race. Now I took out the speedo cap and the switch because I had to go race in Dubai for the International Baja, and I had to use those products. But as you can see, the setup that was extremely simple, all on my handlebar and all the electric connections. Now all the items are disconnected, but nothing broke throughout the whole race. No electrical issues, nothing. I must say, in the last years, I got quite passionate about the electrics on and all the instruments. So generally, when I do all my connections, I can not worry about them. And this is very important if you're going to Dakar, that you should make all the wiring connections. You should do it with a mechanic that will explain to you what goes to where, but you have to do it, because in case you have a problem, you have to immediately know which cables goes to where and you know what the connections are, or you're gonna lose a lot of time and you know might not even get out of solving the problem. For the rest, the bike was all standard, just as you can see the exhaust, which even though it moved a lot, I then changed the rubber and it held up well. As you can see, everything is moving a bit because of the seat bolt that broke. Furthermore, what I did, because I went away just with the 2 sets of tires and couldn't afford to buy other tires, I was lucky that people like Chavo Salvatierra and other riders gave me their used tires and mousse. So every day I raced with used tires and mousse. That was fine, I could get at least 2 stages out of them. Unfortunately, this year we did a lot of asphalt, so anyway, they were, you know, we didn't have any really long stage to stress that much the tires and the mousse. But as you can see, on the last stage, my tire was pretty worn out. For the rest, the bike was just perfect. Didn't have a lot of power because I was hitting just 140, 145 kilometers an hour on the straights. That made it pretty hard because I would overtake other guys in the technical sand sections, and then everyone would just overtake me again with the rally replicas because they were hitting like 180 kilometers an hour. But you know, it depends on what your goal is in Dakar. If your goal is just to finish, I would recommend more to race an enduro bike, keeping it standard and making it as simple as possible rather than a rally replica. Because recently, I don't know, some of you may know, I work as a test rider for the company Get, which makes electronics, and I had the chance to develop the electronics on the Team Himoinsa rally replicas. And I must say, the rally replica is an awesome bike. So much power, it's almost scary. But if you don't have a lot of experience and you are an amateur rider, it's actually very tough to handle in the twisty sections, especially on sand and slow sections. The bike is big and it's really challenging to ride if you're not riding it really fast. So I recommend that if you're just trying to get to the finish of Dakar and that is your goal, go for an enduro bike and kit it with, you know, tanks and just the essential. My recommendation is this Yamaha WR, the old model, because it has such a strong engine. You could also opt for a KTM EXC or Husqvarna FE, but I don't know, I wouldn't trust that. If I had to choose, I'd race Dakar only on 2 bikes, and that is on a Yamaha WR or on a KTM rally replica. Even after Dakar and after months not being cleaned or anything, the bike still runs perfectly, as I'll show you. I'll turn it on and just hear it running. That's music for my ears. I even took it for a ride after I got back from Dakar because I was curious to test the bike and see everything was still working. And now I think I'm gonna have a little ride on the bike and have some fun. Now I'll give you an insight on my instruments. As you can see, I had the roadbook here, Tripmaster, speedo cap. Here I had a switch, which now I don't have. And I placed all my antennas near the GPS, so the cables were really short. Had here a steering damper, the buzzer. Here, this was the switch for my fan. I decided to have my fan not connected that it would start automatically, but I would choose when to start my fan. As you can see, it still goes. Why did I make this decision? As you may have seen in my last video, I had to custom make my fan, but most bikes have already a fan that automatically starts. But the problem is that the heat sensor sometimes is not really precise. So I'd rather have a fan that I decide when to turn on. That is, as soon there's hot weather, really hot weather, or I know there is sand, I will just turn it on and leave it on. Anyway, nothing happens, so I left it on for entire stages. And in this way, I know it's cooling my radiator, because one thing when you're riding in hot weather, you want to keep the bike as cool as possible. Here I had my connections. See, I have a waterproof, dustproof connector, which I would disconnect, and all the instruments would disconnect. In this way, at night, when I got to the bivouac, I just disconnected one cable and everything was off, and I didn't have to worry about anything draining my battery, even though I still have a Kickstarter on this bike, so if it had drained, I could have just kick-started the bike. Another modification I made, which didn't last all the race and I had a little issue, was here I put some of the heat wrap that you can put underneath tanks. It was all inside my tank. I put all this heat shield, but I don't know, with the fuel all evaporating, it didn't hold up, so it wouldn't stick anymore. And I just put a zip tie. In this way, it would still do its work and try to get my fuel less hot as possible, because this also acts on the performance on the bike. You want to keep the fuel as cool as possible in order to avoid vapor lock. Another thing which I had issues with was, you see, I don't have the hose on my fuel tap, because I kept on putting it every day and it would keep on losing it. So after a few days, I'm just like, who cares? I leave it without hose. This is not a problem. What you want to avoid is to put the small hoses, you know, that have a little tap on, because those can get easily obstructed, and you don't want this to get obstructed, because if the fuel is not evaporating out of the tank, what will happen? The tank will blow, and especially where you have the fuel pump might start to leak. This happened to me last year. So this year I run the whole time without no hose here on the front, and on the rear I just put this hose, and I would sometimes lose it and just change it. But important, never put the small short ones, because those can give you huge problems, and you could end up having vapor lock because tanks are not breathing. Lastly, a thing I was happy about was that having brand new wheel sets from Han, so reinforced, they have 30% bigger spokes. I never had to worry about tightening any spokes. And this is important because even though, as I'll show you, I had with me a torque wrench to do this, because I have seriously no feeling at all on spokes. It's something I have no talent for, tightening my spokes. It was good I had not to worry about that. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Feel free to give it a like or share it with your friends. And in one of the next episodes, it's gonna be interesting because I'll show you what was inside my Dakar box. As you can see, all the things are still inside, and I decided to keep everything inside so I could make an episode on this and show you what got me through the toughest race in the world. At the moment, unfortunately, it looks like I won't be able to race next year's Dakar. Entries have just opened in these days. At the moment, I don't have the budget, so I'm trying to sell a few things in order to send my entry again. If any one of you is interested in my Dakar bike, I'll leave it like this. I'll just give it a wash, and I'm thinking about selling it. So I wish I didn't have to sell it, but if that's the only solution in order to get another time there at the start, I'll do so. So if you're interested, let me know in a message, or just contact me on Facebook and my social media. That's all for today. thank you for watching and see you in the next episode.